Amnesty International Kenya and Human Rights Watch have today expressed concerns that nearly 2 months after a series of nationwide protests in Kenya, insufficient action has been taken to hold police officers and their commanders accountable for the destructive use of force in killing at least 12 people, shooting and beating of many others. According to Irongo Hunter, Executive Director Amnesty International Kenya, brutal policing of protests guaranteed under the Kenyan Constitution is unacceptable, and Kenya authorities need to take meaningful steps to preempt violent protests by facilitating the right to assemble and hold officers criminally accountable for unlawful policing. Here are the details.
Amnesty International Kenya and Human Rights Watch are now calling on the Independent Policing Oversight Authority (IPOA) to urgently conclude the investigations into all death and the unjustified use of force by the police. The human rights organization expressed concerns that nearly 2 months after a series of nationwide protests in Kenya, insufficient action has been taken to hold police officers and their commanders accountable for the disproportionate use of force in killings of at least 12 people, shooting and beating of many others. According to Irongo Hunter, Executive Director Amnesty International Kenya, while addressing press today in Nairobi, the failure to act on the mass brutality opens the door for more violence in the future.
We conducted this research in Nairobi, interviewed 100 Nairobi, Kisumu and Homa Bay counties. We interviewed 115 victims and witnesses of police abuses in protests that were conducted on March 20th, 27th and 30th. You will recall that these were the early protests when, that were started after the leaders of Azimio coalition announced nationwide protests since March. Now, in our research findings, we found that the police, when riot police were deployed in civilian neighborhoods, primarily in Kibera, Dagoretti, Mukuru, Kwajenga, around Pipeline Estate, and in other neighborhoods in Homa Bay, Kisumu, and Migori, that the police engaged in unlawful abuses. They illegally arrested individuals that were participating in protests. We documented killings. We documented at least 12 killings, including of people that were not in the protests themselves.
We have spoken to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, and I'm hoping that they will be announcing fairly soon the conclusion of various investigation cases, and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions will be announcing the processing of some of these cases.
The two organizations have documented killings, illegal arrests, beatings, destruction of civilian property, indiscriminate and disproportionate use of tear gas and water cannons, and other serious violations. At least 12 killings by police officers during the protest, in interviews with family members and witnesses, have been corroborated.
We also documented that the police indiscriminately fired into civilian neighborhoods, and this caused serious death, serious injury, as well as the deaths that we documented. Police also beat civilians. They beat civilians with their hands, with their batons, with their guns, and several witnesses sustained serious injuries. And police also destroyed civilian properties, including hotels, including shops, and including homes.
While some of the victims were involved in the protest, according to the witnesses interviewed, were bystanders, passers-by, or people in their homes and business premises.
Kile tulifika kwa gate, mimi nikachungulia ya kwa gate, nikaona maaskari wawili na tutoto tukakuja tuwili. Tukaniambia shosho ya leo si unaitwa kwa hospitali, leo si ameumizwa na maaskari. So mimi nilitoka mbio nikakimbia karibu tu na market Mbotela. Kuna hospitali kwa hapo inaitwa Medipark. Nilienda nikaingia kwa hospitali nikapata mtoto amelazwa kwa kitanda ana bleed. Kuangalia nikaona kichwa kulikuwa na shimo kubwa na damu inaruka.
Kia kiruswa sinarusu sikiingia kwa nyumba. Sasa nilikuwa na mtoto mdogo wa miezi 4. Nilichukua kitambaa, nilikuwa na ruhusa maji na panguza mtoto uso. Tukakaa hapo, mtoto ako sawa. Usiku mtoto ako sawa. Kufika saa 9 mtoto akaanza kutoa bovu kwa mabua ikiwa na damu. Nikiamka niona kama nitamshughulikia nimpeleke hosi. Ule mtoto sikumsaidia. Mtoto aliaga hapo hapo.
It's almost 70 days since the fateful events of the 20th March demonstrations, and as Kenyans celebrate the Madaraka Day, the question still remains, where is the concern of those who are hurt?